Thank you, Madam Chairman. Welcome. What percentage of GDP are we spending on defense in the President's proposed budget?
As a percentage of GDP, I know it in terms of the numbers that we're over $500 billion. In terms of our overall spending, it's about $3 trillion as a percentage of GDP. I would have to get back on the exact number.
Okay, could you do me a favor and report back to the committee?
Yes.
The historical average of GDP spending on defense in times of peace, and the historical average in times of conflict, and I know there are pretty wide variations there depending on the level of conflict, and give me the number we're spending. And when you look at sequestration, in year 10 of sequestration, if nothing changes, what percentage of GDP will be spending on defense, and compare that to historical averages? Could you do that for us?
Be happy to get it. I think it's reflective of why we believe that sequestration needs to be replaced, because we do not agree that those are the appropriate levels over the 10 years.
Do you agree with me that if nothing dramatically changes, President Obama will have added more debt held by the public on his watch than all presidents combined before him?
Because we don't analyze it in terms of those numbers, I have not done the historical averages in terms of adding all the numbers. When we think about this issue of the debt and the deficit, we think about where we are as a nation and where we need to go and the slope of that line.
Well, where are we as a nation?
Right now, in terms of debt to GDP, we're at a number that is in the 74 range, and this budget and these policies take us down to a range that's about 69. So it stabilizes in 2015, and then we decline to those numbers over time.
Over time, does our deficit go up?
The deficit to GDP number actually goes down and goes down to 1.6 in the end of the 10-year window in 2024. So it goes down as a percentage of GDP, which most economists and markets believe are the right measures.
When President Obama came into office, I think there was about $10.5 trillion publicly held debt, 17 now. At the end of the 8 years, and it's all a guesstimate, could you report back to us whether or not the statement that on President Obama's watch, his administration has added more publicly held debt than all previous presidents combined? Could you report back to me and see if that's a true statement or not?
Be happy to. I think one of the important questions is, why do we care about debt and deficit, and how do
Apparently we don't. None of us do. I'm not just beating on you. Apparently none of us seem to be caring that much about it. Let me ask you about the deficit and debt. Do you agree we need to adjust the age of retirement for Social Security and Medicare to sustain these programs over time?
What I believe is that we need to have a conversation and a bipartisan approach to thinking through the long-term issues.
I'm not asking you to
Social
unilaterally raise the age of retirement. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you, you're a very smart person, you're supposed to be telling the country the state of affairs through the budget. Is it fair to say to the American people that we as a nation need to adjust the age of retirement for Medicare and Social Security because people are living a lot longer, there are fewer workers, and this is really driving our long-term debt?
At this time, in terms of our budget and what it reflects, our proposal reflects what we think are the better options to turn to in terms of reducing Medicare costs.
I'm just asking you, you gave me a 10-year outlook here. It's a simple question. I mean, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill adjusted the age of retirement for Social Security back in the 80s. Should we look at doing that yet again and harmonizing Medicare with Social Security age retirement as a nation? Should we be doing that, Republicans and Democrats?
I think the question is coming together on what are the first-order things that people should change. In our budget, we propose what we believe are the first-order changes.
How about this is a good answer? Yes, we should. Republicans and Democrats need to make structural changes to entitlements. 10,000 baby boomers a day are retiring. It's politically tough, but if you did it together, the country would be better off. So why don't we just admit that eventually we're going to have to adjust the age of retirement. We're going to have to change CPI and do some means testing to save these programs from oblivion. Is that not generally true?
On the means testing point, I think you know it is in our budget. On the CPI issue, I think you know that while—
Is it generally true that entitlement reform has to be accompanied by revenue increases? It's called the grand bargain, right?
We believe that you need both in
So
order to
let's
meet the
say
numbers.
that you had you got $600 billion in revenue increases about a year ago. You upped the tax rates. I don't know how much revenue is enough. If you took every dollar from every billionaire, would that balance the budget?
If you took every dollar from every billionaire, would it balance the budget? Have not ever done that analysis.
Okay, well, I'll end with this thought. The flattening of the tax code, eliminating deductions for groups, billionaires, whatever group you want to include, I think it's an exercise that Republicans have to embrace. And in return, we have to have meaningful entitlement reform. My problem with your budget is that you eliminate deductions in the tax code and you do nothing on the entitlement reform structurally, nothing that really matters, and there will be no money left for the grand bargain. So my disappointment is, and I'll just end with this thought, is that the President's got a couple of years left. After this election, he's still going to be President. I just hope we could sit down as a nation, challenge the Republican Party to come up with a reasonable amount of revenue through tax code reform, and have the Democratic Party come up with some real structural changes to entitlements before it's too late. That would be a good legacy for the President. We'll see what happens. Do you agree with that general thought?
What I agree with is that I am still hopeful that the idea and concept of a larger bargain that goes beyond what we did to improve our discretionary spending, which I think Senator Portman mentioned is, we were able to make progress, some progress there, that can happen. And I think part of why we believe that can happen is we reflected that the things that we put forward, we still stand by in our budget.
Senator Graham, would you yield just briefly? You would assume that tax revenue increase would be used to save Social Security and Medicare, not spent on other things?
I would say this, Mr. Chairman, that Social Security and Medicare is being heavily subsidized by the General Treasury. $3 out of $4 almost, 60% at least, is coming from the General Treasury. So I want to save Medicare from bankruptcy, and the reason we have long-term debt is the General Treasury is going to be the funding source for Medicare. As to Social Security, eventually you get in that same boat. I am willing to put some of the revenue to retire debt to entice my Democratic friends to reform entitlements.
Thank you.